I tell my clients this all the time. Look, it might suck to have to set this boundary, and you might feel awful doing it, but it's also going to feel awful when that boundary continues to get crossed. So we have to kind of choose our hard here. What's harder? Is it harder to set that boundary, or is it harder to have that boundary crossed? We have a choice here.
Mental health, emotional health, physical health, deeper understanding, actionable takeaways to improve your quality of life. We're the Level Up guys.
Even guys can have emotionally literate conversations, and we're the guys that are going to prove it.
What's up, you guys? We are back. My name is Billy. I'm here with Jared. We're the Level Up guys. We've got a super special guest today. We've been looking forward to this for a really long time. This is Lexi. She's the founder of Wise Mind Counseling, a mental health counselor, expert in her field. Today, we're talking boundaries. Jared, I'm going to throw it to you. How did you guys connect? How did you meet Lexi? Like, what's a little bit of the background and the history of this whole interaction?
Yeah, so I came across her through a training for continuing education, which is something that we have to do in my field. And she was teaching a crash course on dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. And I was feeling engaged and feeling like she was authentic. And she had mentioned in the 3-day course, we actually go more into boundaries, something that like I'm pretty passionate about. And I was like, oh, interesting. I wonder if she would record a boundaries episode with us. And turns out that sending an email that, the rest is history. Here we are.
We lucked out. Awesome. So I have a question because I consider myself a beginner in most things. Like if we're talking boundaries, what's a good way to look at boundaries in the context in which we're going to talk today?
Absolutely. So, by the way, guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate it. So, in terms of boundaries, I think, in my opinion, it's become over the last few years like a bit of a buzzword, right? I don't know, like more people are using it. Would you guys agree on that? That
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, I think it's important to just like clarify what it actually means when we talk about them, right, Billy, like you're asking. So, simply put, boundaries are just what we are and are not comfortable with in our relationships. It's essentially like the lines that you don't feel okay crossing, or you don't feel okay to have somebody else cross. That's kind of like the simplest, straightforward elevator pitch I can give you for boundaries, I'd say.
Okay. And if you're going to set a line, a boundary, does that mean there has to be a repercussion if you cross that line to make it actually a tangible thing?
Such a good question. So it absolutely can. There will be moments where I think that it's important to have boundary plus, I don't know if I would use the word consequence, but repercussion is a good word for that, right? Like, hey, if this happens, we use the if then kind of method, right? If this, then that. If you continue to raise your voice at me, then I'm going to leave the room, right? Something like that. I think that sometimes if you do just say, this is my boundary, which, by the way, many people will respect that. If you say to somebody who's like emotionally intelligent and attuned, if you're like, hey, I don't love that, it's my boundary that you don't raise your voice at me, most people will respect that. But if you want to be a little bit more thorough, Billy, you can do what you just said, the if then. If you raise your voice at me, then I'm going to leave the room and I'm going to exit this conversation. So that way the person who's receiving the boundary fully knows what this is about to look like for them and for you.
Okay. Yep. Interesting.
I like that too. Or the if then thing makes a lot of sense to me because somebody may or may not respect a boundary, but in terms of like maintaining a boundary, I like how you said, then I will do this thing, right? Like we can only control ourselves. And yeah, can you say a little bit about that?
Absolutely. This is actually something I talk about with my clients all the time. There's, one of the things that you had shared with me about was like the misconceptions of boundaries. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is the idea of like boundaries are punishment or ultimatums or something like that. And I think that I always use the phrase, boundaries are protective, not punitive, right? And what it's saying is that every person has their own autonomy to say what they are and are not comfortable with, right? So I'm trying to think if someone says, hey, I don't want to be around alcohol, right? I'm just coming up with something random, right? Like I don't want to be around alcohol. When you do the if then, if you drink tonight, then I'm going to leave. It's flexible in the sense where you're saying like, you do you, right? You do what's right for you. If you want to drink, you drink. I'm going to do what's right for me in turn, right? and I'm going to leave if I don't want to be around it. We're both adults. We have autonomy. You get to make decisions based on your free will, and I get to make decisions based on my free will, on what's protective. So that's kind of like, I don't know, that's like, I like to look at it like that, Jared, and just to have, this isn't a boundary. This isn't a punishment. This is just how I'm going to handle myself to protect myself.
Yeah. And do you find, like when you work with clients, do you find that their boundary setting is like an attempt at controlling the other person's behavior? Because you were kind of just mentioning there, it's like you do you, and
Mhm.
I'm going to stay me, stay authentic to me. So like, how do you find that trickiness of boundaries?
It is tricky. That's like the perfect word for it. It's a fine line. But and again, I'm always in like family sessions, couple sessions where people are like, is this not an ultimatum? And I think the thought that I'm having is a boundary is, like I said, it's protective for you and it's not meant to control other people. It's meant to just say, here's how I'm going to control myself. Here's what I am going to do. Here is within my locus of control, if you will, right? Whereas an ultimatum and or a threat, if you will, is basically saying, do this or else something bad is going to happen. Right.
Mhm.
It's definitely more controlling. You're trying to control the other person's behavior, whereas a boundary is more about controlling your own behavior and keeping it on the eye, if you will. Does
Cool.
that make sense?
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. That's helpful.
It's
100%.
it's hard.
So, as adult human beings, do we all have, Lexi, like inherent boundaries? And maybe some of those can be like subconscious and we're not really sure. And if so, how do we start to come up with, like a healthy boundary? For example, I might be uncomfortable around somebody who drinks a lot. And I could eloquently say, hey, I have a boundary about this. But oftentimes, if I don't have the words or the techniques to be able to say it, that might come across as being closed off or kind of aggressive or
Mhm.
confrontational, like that. Are we all wired to have some sort of a boundary within us?
So, okay, I love that question, right? Are we wired to have certain boundaries within us? And I think yes, I think we are. I think that certain boundaries that we are born with as human beings is boundaries around violence and harm, right? And what is and wanting safety and things like that. I think that that's inherent. I think that other boundaries are formed over the longevity of your life and realizing what you do, like what you are okay with and what you aren't. And to your point, Billy, it's funny because I tell a lot of my clients, because they'll be like, we'll do this work, right? And they'll be like, I don't even know what my boundaries are. I will always say this, a great place to start is to acknowledge what you don't like, what's not working for you. Because there will be times, and I'm sure you guys have had this as well, I have too, where I won't know specifically what a boundary is for me, like in a specific area, like arena, but something will happen with somebody and I'll be like, "Oh, I didn't like that." Though. Like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I that was not great. I don't like the way that made me feel." And then by acknowledging that that was not great leads me to, does that make sense? Like it leads me to now
100%.
understanding,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's a boundary of mine, how it made me feel internally."
Right. I discovered this the other day at my studio because we have a front lobby and students come in before and after class, coming and going.
Yeah.
And somebody wanted to have a conversation with me and they came around behind the front desk, and I own the studio, I'm there, and my studio manager, they came behind the front desk. And I had no idea, but suddenly I was like, what is going on right now? Where am
Yeah.
I? Like, okay, suddenly there's this, I'm going to
I
have to,
don't like that. I don't like that.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
stranger danger behind the front desk. But this was like, and I didn't realize that would, okay, this is affecting kind of like my personal space, my sense of like professionalism, like that. So that was a newly discovered boundary.
And you would never have probably sat there and thought to yourself, like, oh, it's a boundary that people don't do this, right? But when it happened, when that line was crossed, it felt ucky, right? It just kind of felt like, okay, that was not what I wanted. Actually, you'll get a kick out of this real quick. I had a situation like this myself recently. You guys will laugh. So I'm very close with my sister, and my best friend is close with her sister, right? So me and my best friend were hanging out, and we were, just like kind of like bullshitting and like having fun, and we're talking. And I was venting about my sister, right? And I was just saying, like, here's what's the latest, sister stuff, regular sister stuff, right? And then and then later in the same conversation, my friend said something mean in line with what I was saying, but mean about my sister. And I was like, oh, like I can say that, but you can't say that. And it wasn't until she said it that I was like, I didn't like that, right? And that's kind of like that same thing of like the line was crossed. Didn't realize it mattered that much, but it made me feel some type of way. And then as soon as she said it, I was like, oh, you know what? I didn't love that. Like, if we're talking shit, like, I get to do it. You, you just listen. You just kind of validate a little bit, you know?
And then Lexi, in reflection upon that,
Mhm.
would you then try to have a conversation with her to say, hey, I have a boundary? And or would you maybe change how you approach the conversation next time so as not to like, light a fuse?
Good point. So luckily, this was with one of my friends. We call each other our safe friend. Like she is emotionally attuned. She's that person. I'm sure you guys have that person in your life where it's like
It's
emotionally.
Billy.
Yeah, we're looking,
It's
we're doing
Billy.
this thing.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can like emotionally let it rip, right? And so actually she said it, and I went to go, I was like, and then I looked at her and I was like, I didn't like it. And so I felt comfortable enough in the moment to set that boundary. And she was like, you're right. I'm so sorry. Like, I wouldn't like it if you said that about my sister. So, like, I totally get it. She got it right away.
Yep.
If it was with not my safe friend, I think what I would have done is I would have completed the conversation and then maybe later come back to it a little bit more grounded in my wise mind and said, like, hey, the other day when we were speaking, you made this comment about my sister, and I know you did it with the idea to be, have camaraderie with me in what I was sharing, but I actually didn't love that. Next time, if I'm venting about family, can you just be there, support me, but not join in necessarily? I think
Right.
I'd say something like that.
So
So it
so
seems like the basis of these boundaries, being proactive and reactive, is all about proper communication.
Oh, big time. That's all. It's all communication. I would say it's, well, not all. It is 50% understanding the boundaries within yourself, and then it is 50% communicating them safely with the people in which you want those boundaries to be set.
kind of what I'm hearing is like we don't so we kind of learn what our boundaries are by paying attention to how our body feels, right? Or paying it like whether that's an emotion or even like a physical discomfort when something happens, or
Yeah.
maybe I guess I mean part of it could be the thought I didn't like that. So paying attention to thoughts too. But there's something to be said about like it's okay to not know what your boundaries are yet.
Hmm.
And like part of learning them is the paying attention, maybe the wise mind paying attention, right? Non-reactive. Or I guess it could be reactive in some cases. You still learn what your boundary is. It might just be the 50% of the communication part wasn't as, as helpful as it could have been or as tactful.
Yeah, exactly. I think that you're right, Jared. I think that a lot of it, I almost would say it's about listening to your gut, which is,
Mm.
and we've talked about this, is the wise mind, right? This intuitive feeling of that felt nice, that didn't feel so great, like Billy with the guy coming behind the counter, right? Or the person coming behind the counter, my friend saying the thing about my sister. I'll say this. I also think it can go the other way because I don't want you guys or anyone listening to be like, "Oh, it's only going to be uncomfortable feelings." There's plenty of times where people will do something and I'll be like, "Oh, that was lovely. Like, thank you." And then that's how I find out a boundary, right? Like, what was it? It was a few weeks ago. I was talking with one of my cousins and we were hanging out and I was just upset about something. And even though we're very close, instead of just like going in for a hug, which I would have been totally okay with, she was like, "Can I give you a hug?" And she
Mm.
asked, right? And I wouldn't have thought much if she did just go in for the hug. I would have been totally fine with that. But I thought to myself, that was really special. That was like very lovely that you asked just to make sure like I'm comfortable with that right now in the state that I'm in, right? And so it could be good feelings of like that made me feel good, right?
I'm so glad that you said that because I do a lot of reflecting on boundaries because it's something I'm not great at. And so I try to learn a lot about it. But I have never heard it described that way that you can learn a boundary by something that feels good. And I think the example you gave it really is resonating as being helpful. Yeah.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, I got to give it a little bit more thought, but there's tons of other times where I've had situations like that where I've really been like Thank you for asking, actually.
Mm.
That's really thoughtful and intentional. Whereas other people might not. And again, is it a huge deal if they don't? No, but it just is data, right? It's just data. And okay, I like that before someone gives me a hug if I'm upset that they ask if this is okay, right? So yeah, you just gather data from how your gut feels with these interactions with people. I love
So as we evolve as human beings, Lexi, it seems like those boundaries, like last week's boundary, you might say, oh, maybe that pushes the edge a little bit. Maybe I have a wider space of things I'm comfortable with, things I'm accepting.
that.
Yeah. So as we're talking about like the gut feeling and that, is there also really conscientious boundary setting? For example, I know for the three of us in our careers, we perhaps could have a boundary where we don't like socialize with our clients.
Yeah,
And that's a more of a professional,
right.
really thought out and something that maybe you don't even have to express to the other person. This is just how I'm going to carry myself to put yourself in a really good position
Mhm.
professionally in your career.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that combination, I guess, of like thinking it through and how you want to be in your life, and then your gut instinct and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this seems to me one of the keys to really not only like being professional in a career that we have for all of us,
Hmm.
but also for like personal relationships, not just a family dynamic. If you're in like some sort of a romantic relationship that's going to last for years and years and years, can you speak on how to like nurture and curate an environment where having boundaries and expressing those is part of the fabric of the relationship?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing I want to say about it is that when you are somebody who is willing to understand, work on, like Jarrett, you said, like lately you've been really trying to think about it more and open up the discussion with this. And um, I think that when you're willing to acknowledge what boundaries look like for you, and what, here's the thing, and this is the kicker, and I said this, Jarrett, I don't know if you remember me saying this a while ago, but when people focus on boundaries, I'm kind of going all over the place with this. I hope that's okay. I'll
Do
come
it.
back. I'll come back to center though.
Our listeners are used to going all over the place and
Oh,
coming back to center, so this is
okay, good.
perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Well, a lot of the thing that happens, I find when it comes to boundary setting is when people start to learn about it, they start to learn how to set boundaries. That's like their biggest thing is how do I set? How do I set? And I always remind people that you cannot forget the fact that you also have to learn how to receive boundaries. You have to
Mm.
learn how to be okay with when someone tells you, "Hey, I don't love that. Hey, that does not feel comfortable with me." And I think that that's part of the narrative of boundaries that gets lost a little bit along the way because everyone's trying to be more assertive and attuned to what they need and set boundaries and say no when it's appropriate, that we forget that people are going to say no and set boundaries with us and that we need to be okay and say, yeah, that totally makes sense. That's fair. Um, but Billy, to the point that you're asking, to the question that you're asking, how is it part of the fabric? The thing that I'm thinking is when you start to acknowledge and educate yourself a little bit on boundaries, it does in many cases, I can't say in all, but in many cases, it has this like beautiful kind of like butterfly effect where you get to model, right? You get to model, you get to show your friend, roommate, partner, kid, whomever, parents, hey, I get to set boundaries, so, or they get to set boundaries, so I guess I get to as well. There's this like modeling nature of it, right? If that makes sense.
Mm.
And I think that I just want to say this real quick. That's how I've been learning boundaries my whole life, understanding them and wrapping my own therapeutic journey in understanding this with DBT. But I have to tell you, it wasn't until I lived with my one of my still good friends, Katie, that she's like the boundary queen, okay? And I have to tell her I'm talking about this. She's gonna get a kick out of it. But she was like the boundary queen, still is. And when we lived together, I was like that person that was like, let's watch a movie, let's hang out, let's do this, let's do that. And she was like, girl, like I want to rest in my room alone. So she would say, I'm not comfortable with that right now. I'm going to go home. I'm going to hang in my room by myself tonight, or I'm going to take a quiet night or whatever. And at first, I'm going to be honest with you guys. At first, I was kind of like, do you know what I mean? And that's kind of what it feels like to get boundaries set to you because you're kind of like, okay. Um, but the more,
Like it feels like kind of it can feel rejecting maybe, I guess, or like you're yeah, so I imagine that activates like some maybe sadness or anger or even anxiety in people, and then they're not in their wise mind responding
Jared,
necessarily.
exactly. And that depends also on the person's attachment style. That depends on if
Yeah.
there's any abandonment wounds, right? And for me, it was more just like, oh, what the heck? Like you don't want to hang out, I want to, and like you don't want to. And it did feel rejecting. And that's such a good point that when you get boundaries set to you, it does feel there is a level of rejection to it. And again, I will say on a deeper end of that would be abandonment. There's a feeling of abandonment there. But when she started doing that, like when there was a night where she wanted to do something and I didn't, instead of pushing myself to do the thing, which I normally would have done as a people pleaser, I would have just been like, sure. I started remembering, like, oh, right, she always tells me when she doesn't want to. She's not going to be mad if I tell her I don't want to. And so it became this like beautiful, like symbiotic, mutually respected thing.
It's like a
So
training ground.
exactly, Jared. But so anyway, to come back to center, Billy, to your question, like how is it part of the fabric of relationships? I think that it's hopefully if it doesn't start with both people understanding and knowing about boundaries, it can start with one and then it be a training ground, like Jared's saying, where you learn how to communicate these boundaries and that it's safe to do so. And that it doesn't mean that that other person's going to leave or hate you or be upset. It just means that they're protecting themselves and you can still have a lovely rapport with them, you know?
Yeah, interesting. Um, yeah, I'm fascinated by it. I think it's also sounded a little bit liberating once she had done that and you said, oh, I don't have to be a people pleaser. She's opened up this doorway to me being my authentic self and saying my truth, because a lot of us are people pleasers. We don't want to let people down. We don't want to reject people and all that, setting these boundaries, even if we have them. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm really inspired by how, you do it so eloquently. And I love your stories about, interpersonal relationships of roommates and family and all of these things, because
Yeah.
it makes it really like, digestible for me and probably for a lot of our listeners, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you,
Yeah.
Billy. That makes me feel good. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that, what we were talking about before we started today was the idea of like breaking down this big thing. And again, boundaries in and of itself, I think for somebody who might not be in our field, might not be so acquainted with therapy, they're going to hear the word boundaries and they're going to be like, what the heck is that? Like, what actually does that mean? And so talking about it in examples and like maybe even like personal anecdotes is how I learn. So that's why I bring in those examples, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
100%.
it is really helpful. And Billy, one thing that you were hinting at was that, like, in a situation like that, setting boundaries both like honors yourself and honors the other person. Of like, I am going to be my authentic self with you because I either feel safe to or I want to feel safe to.
mhm.
So I like that kind of take on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The freedom, I want to poke on that for a second though, because it's true. It did, with my friend Katie especially, it did give me the freedom and the thought that I had. And you said I was so eloquent. This is not going to sound eloquent. This is a half-baked thought, okay? But the thought I had was she has no problem telling me when she wants to do what feels right and safe for her, whatever that was, right? So when it came to me doing something I didn't want to do, I thought to myself, okay, I don't want to disappoint her. I don't want to upset her. I don't want to have conflict. And then I thought, but she's so comfortable letting me sit in that. And I'm going to allow her to sit in that as well. Right. Like she doesn't get upset or I don't get upset when she sets boundaries with me. And I think she would afford me that same exact respect if I did it to her. And then we just continued to build this like foundation of like, it's okay. Like it's okay. And again, the biggest thing I'll say is with boundaries, especially for people who might not be so great at hearing them, is the reminder of like, hey, I don't want to do this thing, or I'm not comfortable with X, Y, and Z. And Jarrett, right? And with DBT, and I'm not going anywhere, and I'm still here, and we're still buddies, like, and we're still safe. I'm just not comfortable with this particular thing. And I think,
Mm, so,
yeah.
so you're talking about like hinting on or like like adding the tag of some version of I'm not abandoning you. Like this just isn't something that I'm up for or whatever, but like I'm not abandoning you because that can be the thing that activates the wound and people get up in
Big
arms about. Yeah.
Big time, big time. I had a client a few weeks ago, And Jarrett, you know that I provide phone coaching for my clients, which for you guys, anyone listening, is essentially this like service unique to DBT where we offer um just that phone coaching where clients can text or call in the moment of needing of support, and we'll talk to them. We'll talk them through it. We'll give them the support, validation, the skills that they can use, things like that. But I had a client, and one of my rules of thumb is it's not an individual session. It is like a team huddle, if you will. It's like, all right, we're on the field, something is not going our way. We need to come back together as a team, talk about it, break, and then you go back to the game, right? Sports references. I should not make sports references. Like I don't know sports well enough to be making sports references. Anyway, um, so I was talking on the phone with her. It got to be about that time, and I said, all right, you're going to go use these skills. Let's check in later. But she wanted to stay on the phone with me. And I could tell that she was like vying for time, if you will. And I was like, look, I got to let you go. And she kind of started to say, I feel like you're leaving me. I feel like you're abandoning me. And I said to her, I said, look, I said exactly what we're talking about. This is a boundary, right? You have the skills. I know you can use them. I'm going to cut the call off here, but I'm not going anywhere. We're still going to have session in a couple days, and I can't wait to hear about how these skills went for you. So that incorporation of, I got you. I'm not going anywhere, and I still get to say that this is what I need right now.
That's beautiful because there's like also the messaging of I have faith in you, right? I like
Oh,
that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, she received it well too. She like totally, she got it. And then the cool thing is with that, the more you do that with a client, actually with anybody, right? Like the more that they see that you can say no to something or set a boundary, but still be there and still have a relationship, that trust goes up. Oh, right. They're still my person. They're still my brother, my mom, my friend, whoever. And she says no, and it's uncomfortable for her, and that's okay because she's proven throughout the relationship that she's loyal still, right? It's
Yeah,
interesting.
so my big takeaway from what you both said is built into setting boundaries is inherently some sort of feeling of rejection for the other person, and to kind of incorporate that into your communication to be
Mhm.
able to, just recognizing that might always or most of the time be there as part of the equation.
Yeah. I always try to, Billy, incorporate some version of softness with my boundaries. And look, this is so nuanced, right? Because if it's somebody who pushes your boundaries, and we can totally talk about that, if it's like a come on, come on, come on, come on, and they're not respecting, I'd be a little bit more stern in that space. But I
Mhm.
always try to incorporate a bit of love, a bit of levity. Like, this is true example as well. I had a client, one of my teenagers. Teenagers are wild. Billy, do you have kids?
I don't know. I have a cat and a dog. That's all I can handle.
There we go. No, same here. Okay, good. And Jarrett and I were just talking about his daughter who will one day be a teenager. One of my clients who I love dearly was saying something to me, and she got upset about something, and she kind of, went off a little bit at me. And I had to set a boundary, but I had to do it tactfully, include that cushion of love, but also like, hey, you can't do that. So I think I said something like, hey, kid, I like you, but you cannot talk to me like that. And she was just kind of like, okay. And like she got it. So, but within that just small little statement there, hey, kid, I like you, but you can't talk to me like that. I think
Hmm.
that redirected her, and she felt a little of the softness, but a little of the like, you can't do that. Right.
Mm.
This is kind of a little side quest, but I'm going to ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you think, because so many of our interactions happen either on text or social media, do you think that the in-person communication has kind of devolved a little bit so that maybe somebody might talk to someone in a certain way or push their boundaries in person when normally that might be more accessible, more acceptable online?
Yes. Sadly, yes. I think that you're right. I think that I really do. I hate to say this, but I think COVID did a number on a lot of people and how they socialize and what feels comfortable, normal. I think COVID has contributed to a lot of social anxiety, right? So, yes, I agree that the platform of like texting and doing anything virtually has in a way taken away from understanding what is normal and safe to talk about in person and to know you can't push certain things, you know?
Right.
I think that it's sad though, you know?
Yeah, I try not to spend a lot of time on social media, but when I do, there's a lot of people talking a lot of shit to other people. And I'm imagining that they would never say that to them if they were sitting across
Oh,
the table from them, in person.
never,
It'd be
never.
like, yeah. So in real life, there are certain boundaries. And then if you're just on, TikTok, then there's like this whole new thing.
Yeah, no, okay. So like keyboard warrior, right, is like what I think am I using that term correctly? That's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
right, like someone who's behind the screen has a lot to say about things, would never do it truly in person, but will let it rip on TikTok and say some of the most vicious stuff, right? And it's it's so bad not only for them because they are not learning how to appropriately communicate whatever they might want to communicate, but it's also incredibly hurtful to the person receiving that. And then there's no face to the name. It's just very it's difficult in terms of communication wise and socially.
This is
So
me
on
making.
that note, is having like a face-to-face human interaction, does that really enhance our empathy
Yes.
for another person? And is that why you can be much more successful setting boundaries and communicating like that, actually like with a face-to-face,
Yeah.
face-to-face talk?
Billy, 1,000%. I mean, it's easy to see some, you know what I think people forget too, and we're talking like, TikTok, Instagram, and whatever, and if they have like, let's say even like a little bit of a following, right? It's easy to be like, to forget that people are humans, to forget that they're really just humans, and yes, they're maybe out on the internet and doing their thing, but people read their comments, people see what people, other people say hatefully towards them. If they were to have that conversation one on one, the empathy totally goes up because you hear the tone of their voice, you see their eyes, you understand that they too are just a vulnerable human being, right? And I think that people forget that piece of it when it comes to like parasocial relationships, like, and anyone on TikTok, Instagram, famous people even, right?
Yeah. So one thing that makes me think about is like, while yes, it can be more effective and you can actually get access to somebody's empathy through body language and eye contact and things like that in person, there's also um, a part of me that feels like it could be harder to set a boundary in person because you get an immediate reaction from somebody as opposed to, the distance. A lot of the kids and teens that I work with are doing a lot of their like I don't know, more serious conversations or like,
Text.
breakups or yeah, through text or on, some messaging app. So what can you maybe just talk like I don't even know if I have a question, but can you just talk about like the dynamic there between like
Yeah.
yes, it's more effective when you can get it in person and but also like scary too.
It's so funny because like you're like, I don't have a question. I'm like, I have an answer because like I do, and I have a lot of thoughts on this. I'm gonna be a little yin yang with this. I'm gonna kind of go both ways in the sense that the first thing I think is that it is scary and intimidating to set a boundary with someone in person, face to face, mano a mano, right? Like that is hard because, like you said, Jared, you're reading the reactions in real time. You're seeing if they're getting upset. The potential for rejection feels higher. All of those things. So in many ways, with you mentioned your teenagers, right? And mine do the same thing. We were just going over Dear Man, which is a, boundary setting skill in DBT. And it's a bit of a script, kind of like a structure on how to set a limit, a boundary. And I told my client, I said, all right, you want to do this in person because that will give you your best odds as to not miss anything through subtext. You want to make sure that you are looking the person in the eyes, you can connect with them, be emotionally attuned. And she was like, I don't want to do that. So I said, okay, you know what? Fair enough. She was new to setting boundaries. And this is where I get a little bit like, it's okay because she said, I really feel more comfortable doing it on text. And I said, you know what? If that feels safer for you to type it out first, let's do that. Let's do that. But it can't always be that, right? So I think for the person who's maybe starting to set boundaries for the first time, I would say that doing it through a medium in which you're most comfortable is okay. A boundary is still a good boundary, right?
Mm.
Regardless. I think that you have to be extra careful to make sure there is no miscommunication or murkiness because again, text is like, have you ever watched Key and Peele?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Do you know that skit where they're texting and one of them's like, "Do you want to hang out?" And he's like, "Yeah, whatever." And he's like, "Yeah, whatever." What is that?
Oh,
Have you seen this?
Yeah.
yes, I have. I don't remember the whole thing, but I know the one you're talking
Oh
about.
yeah.
It's like, but it's true because it can be received in such a way, even if it's meant totally neutrally. So okay, to go back to it, I think it's okay when you're learning to just get the words out. Sometimes it's even hard to type the words, let alone say the words out loud. But that comes with the caveat that it can't always be on text and that there needs to be some kind of evolution to the point where you get to do these things in real life, IRL, in person with the people that you're trying to set boundaries with. So I'll make exceptions if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that do people do you get clients where they are hesitant to set boundaries with people because of worry about making them feel badly or any things like that?
That's the main concern, Jared, is
Yeah.
they don't want to, again, people pleaser 101, right? It's the idea that like I don't want to make someone feel bad. I don't want to make them feel rejected. A lot of it's just in general fear of conflict, right? Like I don't want to
Yeah.
bring something up. The other fear that I hear a lot is I don't want to seem bossy or needy. And
Yeah.
then I think that, what I've heard a lot too is my clients will say something like, if someone were to set this boundary with me, I'd be very hurt. So I don't want to set that with somebody else. So those are the major barriers. We don't want to hurt other people. We don't want them to feel rejected. We don't want to come across as too bossy. And we don't like conflict, essentially. Right. But can I say my thought on that real quick, if I might?
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
I tell my clients this all the time. I'm like, look, it might suck, right, to have to set this boundary and you might feel awful doing it, but it's also going to feel awful and maybe even more awful when that boundary continues to get crossed. So we
Mm.
have to kind of choose our hard here. What's harder? Is it harder to say what you feel and set that boundary, or is it harder to not say it, have that boundary cross, and potentially go into resentment land?
Mm.
What's harder for us? We have a choice here. And a lot of times people will say, I guess it's easier to just set the boundary up front.
Yeah, I mean, resentment land is an easy place to live in because we we get comfortable with our discomfort like that. So
Absolutely.
is this something, Lexi, where, if you're just starting and you're going to start creating a boundary with another person or a situation, that practice makes permanent and you get better at it, better at it, better at it. You just have to be kind of brave the
Oh,
first couple of times and take the leap and hope somebody can respond positively.
you're gonna get a kick out of this because I know before you're like, I like your anecdotes. Maybe it's too much, but I have another one for you if that's all right.
Please, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is years ago, one of my first counseling jobs ever, right? I was like a baby therapist, and I had this peer. He was a peer, right? And but he acted as if he was my superior, right? And I feel like we all have that like annoying person at work to some degree, right? And when I was first there, he would do this thing where in the mornings he would like come into my office and like monitor me. Like he would stand over my shoulder and like watch what I was doing on my computer, which in retrospect is like, what the hell? What is he doing? And also now being the boundaried queen I am, I'm like, why was I ever okay with that? But I was a baby at the time, right? Jared, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, 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 I'm just listening. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Oh my God, it's embarrassing. But at first, I remember being like, because I started to dread going to work because of this guy. I remember feeling like I don't want to sit there and have him look over my shoulder and dictate what I have to do for the day. Like it got to the point where I was having anxiety going into the office, so I knew I had to set some kind of boundary. And at first, my boundaries were like super porous, very soft. I was kind of like, maybe do you think, I don't know, like, could you maybe give me a little space, like over here? A lot of qualifiers, a lot of like pussyfooting around it, right? And then like that, I did that for a while. Then once I got comfortable saying that, then I would be like, hey, can you not stand right next to me? Right? Like that became more comfortable. And then once I got that down, I started to be like, please don't come into my office. Right. And then I joke because then it literally did get to a point where I would walk into my office. Mine was across the hall from him. And he'd be like, good morning. I'd be like, hi, slam my door shut. So it really like it evolves in the sense that yes, practicing does make you stronger in getting to say these words. It's just the words aren't hard. It's just having the courage to say them. That's all.
I
Yeah.
think it's really inspiring to know that, even if you're an expert in your field now, we weren't always, and
Yeah.
none of us are born knowing how to do any of this stuff. It's about being brave and seeking resources and education and all that. Yeah.
Exactly. We're all living life for the first time. No one comes here knowing these things. And like you said, Billy, like even us, even now in my career where I'm at, I still have a hard time with certain boundaries with certain things, right? Like it's still tough, but it's something that, like we're talking about before, like I always try to work on because I don't want to go to resentment land. And I don't want to feel unsafe in my relationship. So that discomfort of having to set the boundaries, although it is just that discomfort, it's worth it to have
Mm.
healthier, safer relationships with my people.
Yeah. Lexi, let me ask you this.
Mhm.
Are there anything in the arena of boundaries that most people believe to be true that just aren't? That it's, something we maybe have been conditioned to believe, or society tells us something that that's not actually the way that it is.
It's a good question. I think it goes, yes, there are. I think it goes back to the myths and misconceptions that I was saying before, the idea of like that it means it has to be a boundary. I'm sorry, that it means it has to be an ultimatum or that it's a
Right.
Mm.
threat, right? And that's really, I think that's one of them. I think the other idea is that boundaries are about control, right? And I'll give a little credit and say this to somebody who might not be so well versed in boundaries and or new to therapy and or this conversation. I could see why, right? That person would be like, "Oh, what the heck?" Like I will say this, my parents, God love them. They're boomers, okay? And they're boomers in the truest sense of the word, meaning like they didn't grow up with therapy. They didn't talk about this. So when me and my sister set boundaries, they're like, "Boundaries? What the hell is that?" Right? So I get that it might not be second nature to everybody. It's sometimes not second nature to us. But the idea, the misconception, Billy, I think is that by setting a boundary, it means that you're trying to manipulate somebody or you're mad at them or that you're like icing them out. And that's just not what it is. That's not what a boundary is. A boundary isn't about punishing somebody else. It's about protecting you. It's a way to take care of yourself, your mental health, your emotional well-being, right? And it's about you and your needs, not about controlling somebody else and changing their behavior. So that is, I guess, like my direct answer to that question.
That's a big one. That's a
Yeah.
big one.
That one
Mm.
also it kind of reminds me of this idea of boundaries don't have to just be a no, or they don't have to just represent no. It can be like yes if dot dot dot, or things like that.
Okay, love that you said that because in DBT, there's this one worksheet that I have during one of the weeks. It's like ways to say no, which in other words is ways to set boundaries, right? Same thing. And one of my favorite ways to say no is the no but, right? Which is,
Mm.
hey, do you want to go out tonight and whatever, have a few drinks? Thank you so much for inviting me. No, but I'd love to catch coffee tomorrow and hear how your night went, right? Like it doesn't have to just be no, bye, door shut, right? It could be, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, but then compromise, like, but I am comfortable with that.
That's like a nice indirect manifestation of like the non-abandonment piece or the non-rejection piece, right? It's just like a very conversational way. Yeah, no, but that's a good one.
No, but yeah. And look, if you've got gas in the tank and you can meet someone halfway, you might as well. But what I will say to this, and this is funny but true and definitely my experience, and Jared, I'm curious, since you've been working on your boundaries a lot, I'm curious if this has been your experience. Sometimes, both personally and professionally, I notice that there's this like pendulum swing where people go from complete people pleasers, like yes man, yes woman all the time. When they start to find their voice, then they swing on the other end of the pendulum and they're like, no, 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 no. And I did that. Like when I finally got that
Mm.
strength of voice, I was shutting everything down. Stuff I didn't even need to shut down, but I was doing it anyway because I could. And then I found my equilibrium where I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I can say yes to some things. I could say no to the things I don't want to. But Jared, did you do that at all?
So it's interesting. I mean, I love the pendulum thing, right? Like, I think that I find that to be true for so many like new skills that I try to build. It's like swing too far and then like find middle again, kind of.
Yeah.
For boundaries, so for me, I get in moments like that, but I wouldn't say I've entered a phase of that. Like, I'm really still working on boundaries in my high stakes relationships because so I don't know if you're into enneagrams or anything like that. It's
A
the
bit.
personality. Okay, so mine is the peacemaker. And so right
Mhm.
there, it's like I don't want conflict, whatever. But like I also know intellectually that a relationship that can handle conflict is a stronger relationship, right? Like, the capacity to disagree, have boundaries, all of that, right? Like, so intellectually, I know that. In my body, it feels terrifying, and so like when I get worked up,
Mm.
and lose some of my and I lean more towards my anger because like the underlying emotion that is suppressed is anger for my particular one. When
Yeah.
I lean into that a little bit and not to we had this thing where like we had some anger episodes is meant to spark the engine, not explode the car, right? And so it's like when I go to that place, I'm still working on how can I spark the engine and not be
Mhm.
like no, or like more aggressive or whatever. I don't like that. Something that's like just assertive and doesn't need to explain itself. But that's the long way of saying like my pendulum is doing all kinds of stuff that it's like yeah, I don't know.
I think that that's fair. I think that that's completely fair. I like that. It's meant to spark the engine, not blow it up. And and again, I can relate to that in the sense of like there are moments where you feel so strongly about whatever boundary it is that you're very quick to like shut it down and then you don't give it a thought to say like, well, what is the middle path here? Like, is there actually a compromise? Is there a middle ground? And I think it takes time to find that equilibrium for everybody. So it's okay that the pendulum is swinging all different ways. You
Yeah.
find what works for you through practice and trial and error, right?
Yeah. Could people, could like, is there a way to identify like a type of boundary that somebody might have if they're listening, or like whether they like, whether it's a healthy version of one, or could it be shifted to something else?
Totally. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna speak on your words though for a second here and say
Yeah.
all boundaries are boundaries. Are they're okay. There's
Mm.
no boundaries are right or wrong. It's just what people are and aren't comfortable with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's funny because when you sent me some of what we were going to talk about today, one of the things that the question that I love that I go over in the workshop is types of boundaries, right? Like
Yeah.
categories of boundaries, right? And there's six main ones, but there are plenty others. But like just to kind of, may I just go over them real quick?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you got your intellectual boundaries, right? That's your, I don't want to talk politics at dinner, right? Or I don't want to talk about my salary with people I'm not close with, right? Things like that. You have your emotional boundaries, preferences around what, how much, and when emotionally charged conversations are had, right? Um, Material boundaries. Oh, actually, let me come back to the material boundaries because I have something. I think, Jared, if you remember, there's a funny little thing I want to tell you about that. Um, there's also what is it? Time boundaries, how time-related needs are handled. Are you going to be on time? Do you mind if we come a little late, right? What does that look like? There's sexual boundaries, right? Boundaries around intimacy, sex, and how and when it's talked about. Physical boundaries. This one always makes me laugh because this is your like proverbial like I don't like getting a hug. Like I don't want a hug.
Mm.
Like I'm okay with like a high five or like a handshake, right? Things like that. And I joke because like I am that person. Jared, I think I've told you this. Like if I ever met you guys in person, if we were to go, I'm the type of person where it's like, give us a hug. Like I am like your old aunt who wants to hug and kiss. Like that is me. And there are so many people who are like, girl, do not touch me, right? I need space. And that's okay too. But that's a physical boundary. So yeah, there's several different kinds.
Yeah.
I would argue there's more though. I would say that there's money boundaries, right?
Yeah.
There's
You wanted to come back to material as well.
oh, this is funny because Billy, you'll this is the first time you're hearing this, but like me and my sister, for any you guys are men, you don't I don't know if you have do you have sisters?
No,
No.
no, but I now I remember the story you're about to tell.
It's so funny, but it's true. I'm a sister. My sister's a year and a half older than me, and we were very close in high school. And we were very close our whole lives. But in high school, we shared like the same friend group and all this stuff. And so material boundaries are your preferences on how your things, your possessions are taken care of. That's like, hey, I'm okay if you borrow it, but you have to bring it back. Or like you can use my car, but you have to bring it back with a full tank, things like that, right? And so she had this great closet when we were growing up, and she also had like the best fashion sense. So I had very loose material boundaries, or she had good boundaries, and I just didn't care about them. I crossed them all the time, as many little sisters have done throughout the period of history. Okay. I would go in her closet, I would try on all these clothes. And Billy, the story that Jared's talking about is I went into her closet. I had this party that I was going to go to. And I went into her closet and I found this like really great outfit. And I was like, oh my God, it's going to look so good. I go to this party and it was the time of like MySpace and like, I don't, what was it? What was the Tumblr? Is that right? Do you guys remember that?
That was the thing, yeah.
That was a thing. Someone at the party must have taken a picture of all of us. And my sister shows up at that party. And in the middle of like us all hanging out, she goes, give me my top. And like in the most sassy sister, older sister way she possibly could. And I was mortified. And that was like my come to Jesus moment of like, oh, right. You can't touch other people's things, even your sisters. So, but that's like a material boundary, you know?
Yeah.
But
Wow.
Lexi, I want to make sure that we let you go on time, but we can definitely, I mean, we'd love to have you again for boundaries or other things at some point. And it's been a real fun time and a pleasure learning from you.
Yeah, it really has. So Lexi, so how for our listeners, like, so Wise Mind Counseling,
yes.
is it wisemindcounseling.com? Like, where can people find you?
Great question. Exactly. It's wisemindcounselingllc.com. And we're based in New York and we serve New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Florida, and a couple other states. And so if anyone's interested and wants to drop us a line, I got to tell you guys, like an hour was not enough. And I hate that I have something after this because we could go for like all day. Truly, like these are great conversations. So thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I agree. Oh, it's been our pleasure for sure.
Let's do it again. And yeah, so check out her website. It's really great. You guys do group stuff, you do individual stuff. And also one thing that I saw is that for counselors, you offer like a supervision group too. So any counselors that might be listening, if that's something you're interested in, hit it up.
Thank you so much, Jared, for that. Yeah, we do Clinician's Corner and it's fabulous. It's every other Sunday. Truly, thank you guys for having me. I had a great time. And Jared, I'll email you later and just say thank you again, okay?
Yeah.
Thanks, Lexi.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
That's it for today, you guys. Make sure to follow us. You can find us on all the major platforms. If you really like what you heard, maybe share it with a friend, share it with a buddy, maybe share it with an enemy, because we all need a little bit of love. We're going to level up together. See you next time.